So hi, everybody. Those of you that have been a part of our alumni talks over the last few months probably know me already, but for those that don't, I'm Jason Barquero. I am an alum of Cerritos College myself, back from early 2000s, we'll say, right? I won't date myself too much, but very happy to be here and also be a host of this series. So thank you to Matthew for that opportunity. As always, it's a lot of fun. And I see folks are trickling in here. We're getting some more attendees. So I'm going to give it about maybe the next minute or so here to really get started for a sec. So we'll do that. Just as a reminder, we are recording our talk today, and we will be introducing our guest here in just a second. One quick housekeeping note, as they say, at any time, if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to ask our guests, you'd like me to chime in and ask, you can drop those in the chat. So please do that. And also, or you can also drop those in the Q&A. You have two options for doing that. This is obviously a webinar format, so we can't see you or hear you, but we can read your questions that you have or comments that you have. And we do have Matt, and we have some folks also that'll be monitoring that chat. I'll do my best to try to get those in as well, but as you know, sometimes we get into the conversation and it might take us a little while, so be patient as we get to those in just a sec.
Am I able to see those chat stuff,
yes.
Or is it just good?
Yeah, good question, Eli. As a panelist, you're able to see that as well. So you actually have the same, I believe you do. Yeah, you should have as a panelist, because yeah, you are a panelist on here. So if you look at your chat section, those will come up. And if you look at the Q&A section also of Zoom at the bottom, if you click on that, that box should come up for you.
Yep. Got it.
Anna just said hi. Thank you, Anna. So then you should be able to see that. So yes.
Hey, AJ.
You can see that. I can see that, and so can.
Perfect.
It's awesome. All right. And so, you know, Eli, before I get started, I introduce you. One thing, I feel like an unprepared host here today, but I can't find my notes here as to what year did you complete over at Cerritos College?
Great question. So I completed.
Matt probably has that answer somewhere. What's that again?
I completed. Oh, can you hear me well? Am I clear?
Sorry.
Perfect. So I completed my associates 2011. I like to say, if I remember correctly.
Okay. All right. So with that, not too long ago, so I want to introduce Eli Villa, who is our honored alumni guest for this session, who just, of course, as just said, graduated with his associates back in 2011. Eli has done a lot of wonderful work. As you know, he has his associate's degree from Cerritos College in Automotive Technology. So I'm really enthusiastic about the conversation today, being a sports fan myself, and seeing what you have gone into racing and in your career. I plan on having a good conversation about that today, and the different types of careers. And I'm assuming we have students and alumni that are probably listening, wanting to know more about your background, but also about the different types of opportunities there are, even within automotive, right? Because you've taken it into a very different direction. So rather than me read a long, boring bio of you, Eli, why don't you just kind of give us your elevator pitch, as we call it in the world of career, right? And kind of, you know, your background, who you are, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm happy to. Let me know, like, if you have any other questions, anything that come up to mind, we'll go back and forth and stuff like that. So don't worry about interrupting me. I can go on whenever and ever. I've done a few podcasts for a few friends on their stuff. And we've gone for like, it was like a 2-part episode. It was like 3 hours. So let me know, give me some signs or something like that if I'm going too long on one subject.
No worries. Go ahead.
So it all started with Cerritos College. I was actually, at the time, I was in Cal State LA. And then my partner at the time, she was going to Cerritos, and then I was giving her a ride there back and forth. And that's when I found the automotive department. And that's when I met Mr. Glick. And he chimed me in a little bit of what's going on. And it's kind of funny because normally most people will go from a college to a university. And I went from a university to a college because I enjoyed the automotive program, and I wanted to know more about automotive. I saw it more valuable to what I wanted to do in life.
Where were you at before when you transferred into Cerritos?
What's that?
Where were you at before Cerritos? You said you went from
California State of Los Angeles, Cal State LA. So I went straight from high school to Cal State, which if I would have gone from high school to Cerritos, it would have been way better.
There you go.
So I did that. I was part of the import technician training program. I volunteered at different shops. I got to know a few people. I took a very overzealous project that Mr. Glick knows about. It was an old beat up 1970 Beetle. And that's really what started the whole ball rolling. I ended up meeting a good friend who became a mentor to me. He was a older gentleman, basically built pro drag racing motors, hanged out with all the legends that made the Volkswagen as big as they were. And he mentored me on engine building and everything else. And I spent some years with him under his tutelage, learned a lot from him. Then afterwards, I transitioned to another motorsports endeavor, which was fabrication and roll cage building. And that's when I met another good friend of mine who became my second mentor and a really good friend. And I was, doing a lot of grunt work and stuff, and ended up notching tubing, building braces, and then suspension components. And then pretty soon I was doing roll cages and expanding from there. And it all started with the endeavor of just, I enjoy automotive. I enjoy every part about it, from engines to the driving experience, everything else. And then I got deeply more and more involved into motorsports. And that's when my second mentor came, and it's like, hey, go to the track, have a good time. And then first time at the track, had a blast, was addicted for sure. And then pushed forward and forward. And I quickly realized that racing is a little bit expensive. So I was trying to find a way how to mitigate that cost. And I figured there was a series under SCCA that was called B-Spec, and it was basically economy cars. That the method behind it, which was a beautiful idea, was you can get a low budget car that was like around 10 or 15,000, economy car, and built it up with a cage and a base suspension and go racing with it. And it's reliable. You don't have to do anything to the engine. You're limited on what you can do. Is basically a newer version of spec Miata, which is basically first and second generation Miatas under a spec suspension, a spec engine, everything else. So everyone's equal. So it's all about skill instead of, money and parts and stuff like that. And that was a new generation. And then when I saw that, at the time I saw what my mentor was doing, and I was like, okay, how can I do what he's doing? So it just gives me a few extra dollars for me to go to the track and race. And he's like, all right, well, pick up a newer car, and build parts for it. And that's when I started looking down the line. There was the Mini Cooper, which we've all seen, beautiful car. Everyone makes parts for it. There was a Mazda 2, which again, a bunch of other manufacturers were making parts for it, the Honda Fit. And then there was a Kia, and I looked and nobody made anything for Kia. And I was like, okay, definitely gonna check this out. And then I started making onesie twosie parts, and then they started selling, and slowly it started building up. And pretty soon it moved from parts to exhaust to connecting with different people. And then over the course of that, I was getting more and more involved in motorsports. I ended up moving to another job where I worked for a high-end manufacturer of racing equipment, from racing suits, from head to driver, helmet, racing suit, boots, everything custom head to toe. And I was lucky enough to get the job because they were the top echelon when it came to motorsports as far as safety equipment. They were there. The owner knew Ayrton Senna, which is a Formula One legend. Alan Prost, another Formula Championship. He helped develop a lot of the gear before it was actually required, and his safety was far above everyone else. The comfort, it was all custom head to toe gear. The company is called Stand 21, and they're based in France, so everything was custom made to measure stuff. They're the official supplier of Corvette Racing and Porsche Motorsport, to give you an idea of the scale of how very expensive their stuff is. So I did that. I got to travel a lot. I got to check out, off-road as far as like trophy trucks and the Baja 1000, Baja 500. I got to check out land speed racing like Bonneville South Flats. I got to experience a lot of POC Porsche racing, the Pro 11 motorsports kind of stuff. And then that encouraged me more to build and build and build. And then pretty soon I had to move. I moved out of state. Didn't have to, but I chose to. And now I live in Washington State. And then I've slowly expanded more and more to basically just follow more or less my passion of what I enjoy is just motorsports racing.
So let me ask you then, for someone that's listening and saying, okay, I want to get into motorsports and I want to race, particularly race. what makes a good race car driver, and where do I start? Where would I start?
Great question. So before I answer that question, Matthews asked me, would you be able to share photos of some of your work and your builds? I'm more than happy to. I'm sure I got some work around here somewhere, but I don't want to spend too much time clicking and stuff like that. So, but yes, I'm happy to share them. Just let me know when you want them. I'll send them to you. So back to your question, as far as getting involved in motorsports, that's a great question because I had that same exact question. And that's when I asked my second mentor, and I was like, what sport do you want to get into? Motorsports, like, do you want to get into off-road, like dune buggies, like Glamis, like Baja 1000 stuff? Do you want to build like a land speed car? Do you want to just go to the track and have a good time, and then eventually develop to wheel? There's a lot of different tastes, if you will, in motorsports. It's not just confide into one. Most people, when they think motorsports, you think of Formula One, right? For example,
right?
Because everything's synonymous with Formula One. But there's so many other motorsports. There's rally racing. There's off-road, like Baja style, best in the desert. There's club racing, like SCCA, NASA, to name a few. There's time attack. There's drifting, which is also very popular with the youth. I mean, there's so many ways you can go around it. And the best way to do it is we'll go for the motorsports as far as like club racing, just to keep it like standard. Like, you have a car, whichever car it may be. It doesn't have to be brand new. It doesn't have to be like a super high-end brand or anything like that. It just, as long as it runs, it has oil and brake pads, you're fine. And just, go online, motorsports registry, NASA Pro Racing, they're a sanctioning body, really good with coaching and everything else, and do a track event and just start from there. And all you need is a helmet and a running car. They can guide you to it. Super easy. That's all.
Your mentor, you said you had a second mentor. I know you've talked about your professor, but then you had a second. How did you find and who was your second mentor? The one that was mentoring you into racing at this point.
So the mentor that got me into racing, it's funny. At the time, I bought a Subaru STI, which was my high school dream car, and I was throwing mods into it like everyone else, and adding suspension and intakes and tunes and all this fun stuff. And I was noticing I was getting faster and faster. I was like, okay, well, I need to consider being safe. So to me, the safest thing I can think of was put a cage on the car, a roll cage on the car, because I've seen too many incidents where cars would flip over and stuff like that. And everyone's seen the classic and the new, racing or chase movies where you see a car flip over like 1 billion times, which is unrealistic, but everyone thinks of that kind of stuff. So I was like, all right, I need to look for a cage. I Googled a cage, like who can make cages. And then my second mentor, Jim Pierce, he came up. He was in Torrance, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this guy a call, and I'm gonna ask him. And he's like, yeah, come over. We'll talk about it. We'll let me know what you're looking for. And he wanted to see the car. He wanted to talk to me. And I came in, super awesome guy, down to earth. He's the one that started talking to me. He's like, what do you want to do? What is this for? This is where you want to go. What material you want to use in here and there. He was basically guiding me to what I wanted to do. And then he's the one to like, go to the track. Before you add anything else, you're set. Just go to the track. Same as I was, just go to the track, try it out, have a good time. I'm like, okay. And he's the one that tells me, he's like, all right, this is a step you want to go. If this is the path you want to take, these are the steps to do it. Cause he's a pro racer. He did the Baja 1000 for several years. He built off-road trucks. He was also a professional rally driver. Did California Rally Series, American Rally Association events all across the West Coast. And then he also got into wheel racing, endurance racing. He got up to the pro level, like Grand Am stuff back in the 90s when it was a big title. I think now it's called WeatherTech, if I'm right or wrong, not sure. But he basically did everything I wanted to do. He touched on just about all the sports that I cared about. So he was the source to do it, and he would build the cars. He would know everything to do, what to do necessarily as far as suspension, safety, and how to get a car to last in a race. So that's how I met him. I met him through that. And the way I got to know him more and more is actually volunteered my time. I donated my time because I didn't know what to do. I didn't have the experience that he was looking for. So I actually volunteered my time to go to his shop and then just, help him out whatever I could. And then more and more I started getting better. And then I started working for him. And then afterwards, I kind of branched out and started doing my own thing with his support because he knew where I was coming from and what my goals were.
So we have, I'm sure most students that go through the auto tech program, maybe not all of them want to necessarily race, but I'm sure they would all love at some point to work for some of the places that you've worked at, right? And I'm sure, so
Right.
talk a little bit about the types of opportunities and roles that are available for students, recent graduates from an auto tech program like at Cerritos, of course, that want to work. A lot of them sometimes will land jobs at your local retail companies and organizations that are doing, they're doing a lot of work on cars or at dealerships and things like that. Great opportunities. We have some students, of course, that aspire to work at, maybe for a Formula One race team or one of these race teams out there and be a part of that. What's the difference? What do they need to know in order to land a job that's a little bit more untraditional than maybe some of the more traditional routes?
Great question. So one is knowing where it's at. And the second one is honestly proving your worth. And a great way to prove your worth is literally just volunteer your time. And it may take a week, it may take a month, it may take a little bit more than that. But if they see your commitment level, they're more than likely to hire you versus someone else. And then at the same time, you're able to see if that's really what you want to do, or if that's the company you really want to work for. Granted, on the top level stuff, you don't have access necessarily to that kind of stuff unless you know someone or someone refers you to it, or the opportunity arises and things line up for you. But you can do your best by preparing for it in case that situation happens. But with that said, as far as getting involved in motorsports and getting an idea of what it is, crews are always sought out for. People, even myself, are always looking for someone to help crew. And you get a gist of what's going on at, fraction of the cost. You get to be a part of the team. You get to find out what are the rules, what's involved, how the car works. And, you get to pick people's brains. And that's what I did when I was working for Stan 21. I talked to a lot of pro teams, a lot of pro drivers that I became really good friends with. I asked them questions like, how do you do this? Or how do you get to this level? And they would answer those questions. They would tell me their experiences and I would jot them down. And each experience is unique to that specific person, how they got there and everything else. But the more people you talk to, the more information you get, the more you start seeing a small but noticeable pattern of how they got there. And that can help guide you get to that point. With that said, there are a lot of performance shops out there. A lot of shops, it just matters if it ties into one, your schedule, one, if you're able to do it and make it work with what you have going on, because not everyone can donate their time. I totally understand that. But that's a great way to get to it. As far as finding the shops, and that's a great question, is a matter of, honestly, nowadays you can probably find just about many performance shops at the track, or you can find someone that races cars, or you can find someone that knows a bunch of other companies that they would like to go for, and then just walk in the door and ask. Just ask. Like a lot of these people that will buy parts from, there's like Evasive Motorsports. There's a lot of other small shops and bigger shops and medium-sized shops. A lot of them will take the free work, and a lot of them you'll find out whether they're doing the work there or not, or someone else is doing the work. I've done the work for some other shops that they can do it. They just didn't have the fab guy, but they do a bunch of other cool stuff. And I've done roll cages for them. I've done other parts for other people that they're so specialized. They're like, hey, I know you can do this, so you'll do that. So the interesting part about that is that if you can get your hands into, whether it be a company like Porterfield that just makes brake pads, and they're willing to take you, that's one way to do it. Or you can just start from an automotive shop and move to another one to find out if that's the right fit for you. I remember there was a small shop in the city of Downey, and they had like a Subaru rear-wheel drive WRX drift car or something that they made. So each shop will have their own thing going on, and if it matches what you want to do, that's the best way to do it.
And one thing what's really kind of switching gears a little bit, Eli, that's really fascinated me is you've gone on and you earned of course, you earned your bachelor's degree, and you also earned an MBA degree. And as I'm reading more about this, okay, you got a master's in business, and I was on your website, and you have a lot going on there. So kind of go through, why an MBA? When did you decide, okay, I really need to, was in motorsports, but I need to get a master's degree in business, and what was the thought behind that, and how has that helped you, and some of the other things that you're doing as well, outside of in a vehicle and actually racing?
Right. So it's an interesting story, honestly, because to me, the way I've always done stuff is just on drive. And that's one thing I'll tell anyone is like, if you have the drive, you'll do what you want it. Like, you'll make it happen one way or another. And if not, you'll get really close to the point where you're happy with where you're at. But you have to have the drive to do it, and that takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of tenacity and patience more than anything else. So it's funny. So I got my AA, then I got my bachelor's, and even with my bachelor's, I kind of stayed humble. I still volunteered my time to help others and help their shop and learn some skills that I didn't know, and I didn't really need to because I had the degree, right? But I still did it anyway because it's just something I was motivated to do. It wasn't necessarily something about ego. In my search for that, I ended up getting contacted by Northwood University, and they were telling me about the MBA program, and I'm like, all right, well, do I want to do this? I looked at my finances, I looked what they were offering, the scholarships that were available, and to me at the time, it seemed a little bit financially, it made sense because it was compared to many other schools that are charging 80 to 100 grand for masters. I was like, Northwood was charging a fraction of the price, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. I can pull that off with work and everything I have going on. So it seemed feasible because I was like, I don't know what's ahead in the future. I don't know if I'll use the MBA or not, but at least I can put that to rest and stop at an MBA, and then move on from there. Like, if I want to go for a doctorate, PhD, at least now I have something set in stone. Because currently, unfortunately, for what it is, we're going through hyper educational inflation, which is the value of an AA is now the value of a high school, the value of a bachelor's is now the value of an AA. So it depreciated quite a bit because everyone wants to get educated, everyone wants to get a successful job. So it's just a massive swarm. And I was like, okay, well, at least if I get a master's, I'm in a good position, right? I can't go wrong with that. So it was more of a safety measure, and the finances lined up. And I was like, okay, it seemed like a good choice with Northwood. And I knew all of Northwood staff. Todd and Pam and Judy and stuff. So I got along with everyone. I was like, okay, this is a good fit for me. So that's why I lined up to the MBA. And it's kind of interesting because as far as it lining up to what I do, where it lined up is more or less on the leadership aspect and how to manage situations and how to handle things and see things through not only the employee standpoint, like, the guy that's just doing the work, through a management perspective, and also as far as even outside management through an owner's perspective. So you're able to see kind of like a full circle of the operation. You're able to see things like supply chain management. You're able to see things like where there's some certain gaps in the company you're in, and when there's also opportunity. And opportunity maybe not for the company, but maybe for you individually at the level. And I managed to have success like that by working with people that I've either previously worked for or previously had contacts, and build relationships and build parts for them. And that's like, hey, I noticed, you're building these parts, but you're taking too much time building this certain set. I can build that for you outside for a fraction of the cost of what it's costing you. And they're like, yeah, here. And slowly it started building up, and it's like, oh, hey, can you do this? I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I was like, you know what, this piece is taking too much. Why don't you just do the whole piece? And I'm like, okay, I'll do the whole piece. I'll revise the price. And then slowly but surely started snowballing into bigger and bigger and bigger stuff. So the MBA did give me the confidence where if it didn't work out, whether it be, my motorsports business or something else I wanted to start, I can always do a fallback and get another position at a job somewhere else, which, people will take somebody with an MBA versus someone with a bachelor's and everything else, or someone that has a lot more experience. So if you feel like, oh, well, I need to have a degree, that's not always the case. Experience will definitely how you handle yourself in the interview will dictate how the outcome turns out to be. So yeah, sorry.
No, no. And when I see your, a lot of things that you've accomplished and been involved with, I know there's always students that want to get involved, just folks in general in sports, right? And be involved in some capacity outside of the technical side. Talk a little bit about also the other career opportunities there are for people, if, not just at a shop, but if you look at any one of these, not a crew, but I guess within a racing team or within NASCAR or within, if we get into Formula One, and as you know now with your MBA, I mean, you could go into marketing, go into finance, a lot of different roles. So talk to us about what you know and some of colleagues and friends you have in the different roles and how they're making an impact within the business of the sport itself, right? For folks that, you need a graphic designer, or you'll need a social media person to run social, right? And so sometimes students think, well, I need to have a certain degree to get into that. So you can be a marketing person, have no racing experience whatsoever, but maybe you really want to be on the business side, right? Of those things.
Right. So I'm happy you asked that, because one of the key features is you have to decide where you want to start at. So if you're going to start as a tech, which is great, it's a hands-on approach. That's one avenue you can start. If you want to start from marketing end, you can go from that end and focus your degree on that kind of stuff. As far as motorsports, you can look at it just as like Formula One and NASCAR. You have to see it more as a whole automotive industry, which is a beautiful thing, because you can be part of a NASCAR situation or a Formula One situation if you're working for the company that's making the part for that specific car, team, or whatnot. The accessibility to get to the top level pro sports is a little bit difficult, and it takes a lot of time and mentoring, especially if you're able to find the right connections in the teams that are doing the work for them. A good friend of mine, he's a rally driver, a competitor as well, a good friend. He actually basically picks up all the turbochargers from all the WRC like World Rally Championship cars, and any that failed, and he takes them back, takes them to work, and analyzes how they failed and why, and then builds a better one, and then sends it back to the team to find out the failure points and how they do it. And then basically all that engineering goes into the regular stuff they sell to the public or the industry and stuff like that. It's interesting because it's easy to see that you want one person and immediately gets connected to a motorsports team or NASCAR or something like that. It's actually more spread out like a web than anything else. And the beauty behind that is like the automotive industry and motorsports in general is a very, very, very small world, like very tiny. Like a lot of people know a lot of people. People know people left and right. I got to meet, like Frederick Eibach, the owner of Eibach Springs, when I was at SEMA. And he gave me his card, and he's like, once you graduate, give me a contact, and I'd love to have you work for me. And it's small stuff like that where you have to understand everyone that's there from marketing to just working on the parts and manufacturing, they're all there for roughly the same reason. They love motorsports. Like we're car people. We love it for all it's worth. So to get connected to that, your best advice, my best advice actually, is connect with more and more people. Find out what you can do, volunteer for shops. I don't know if the school still does it. There's also SEMA. Get in contact with SEMA or become a SEMA member. There's always small shops and medium-sized shops looking for people, whether it be either marketing or manufacturing or repair or management. There's always people looking, and SEMA is a great source to get in contact with. If you don't get to go to the show, you can still become a member and stuff like that, as far as the individual level. And I'm not sure if Cerritos is still doing the whole SEMA event. I know when I was there, we did one event, which was great. It was amazing, and you get to learn a lot from it. I'm not sure if I answered your question or not.
Yeah. And one thing I see here is that it sounds like you're building up your consulting side of the house and the consulting business. So, which is great, right? And that's I think part of leveraging your MBA and your education and where you want to go. Can you talk a little bit about what aspirations you have for that? That more entrepreneurial side of the house also, and I see that getting into consulting, and really where in general you see, your motorsport business from now and then over the next 5 years.
It's a great question. In 5 years, right now it's under really aggressive growth. Like COVID was an unfortunate event for everyone, and I know everyone's suffering and people But the strangest thing happened, and it happened across the whole automotive industry, is people spent a ridiculous amount of money on parts and everything they could buy under the sun. Friends that
that's interesting. I wouldn't have imagined that.
Yeah, every partner that I've had as far as vendors and people I work with, everyone I've done business with as far as their business, every one of them broke records. They broke records last year, like month to month, back to back. And we were all like wondering why, because we all embraced, we were all thinking the worst case scenario. Nobody's going to buy parts. It's going to be, as quiet as a cricket. And, we'll have to hold on for the storm, right? And that was not the case. Even now, we're still seeing issues where a lot of people are running out of material, even for me, what I use, running out of parts. Delays are like 2-3 months on certain things. Yeah. It's very crazy.
Could it be, and I want to talk about that a little bit because I think that's fascinating. Could it be that, I guess the best thing I can compare it to in a way, right, is you hear a lot about during the pandemic, people were taking up projects at home, right? So they were going to Home Depot, they were doing projects at home, and they were doing more gardening, and they were just building stuff, and they were passing the time at home. If you're like me, you like to golf. I heard golf just went up. Was one sport that just surged because that was the only thing that was open, and people were taking up golf, and things were busy. And could that be the same, right? That this was just a great pastime that people say, I'm going to work on my cars because that's the one thing I can still do during this pandemic.
And that's what we all came to a consensus was, everyone has time to work on their cars. So it's like, I might as well buy these parts. And we were like, what? And it was like whatever parts we had, they were all immediately sold out within a couple of weeks. And we're just struggling to keep up. And everyone I've talked to has been struggling to keep up. And I think what it is there's there was a little bit of the stimulus, which came into time. And then the fact that so many avenues were cut, because I think we're all used to the days where, we can go out to eat and have a good time every other day, on the weekends and everything else. And during that time, we couldn't do that. We couldn't go out. Some places were closed. Some places were takeout only. It was very different for everyone else. And which caused an issue, which was caused people to actually save their money, not spend the money. And I was hearing a gentleman, I think Aaron Clearly, he was talking. He's a finance guy. He was talking about the MPC, marginal proficiency to consume, in the States was like somewhere near about 40%, something like that. Which means basically for every dollar you get, you spend 60 cents and you keep the 40, more or less. Which is insanely high for the U.S. It used to be for every dollar you would get, you would spend $1.25, and that 25 cents came from credit cards. So to see that kind of level of people saving up, a lot of people were burning to spend that money, and any avenues that were open, like online stores and stuff like that, they were the only avenues that were open. So like I might as well buy my intake or my exhaust or my springs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we were all attributing. I was like, everything funneled to the only places that were available, like you said, and basically they cleaned out house. And
well, it's a wonderful hobby too for a lot of folks, right? And there's just a lot of enthusiasts. And when you think of that, that's what we all know them. We all have family members or friends of us ourselves or our neighbors who are working on cars and are fixing up vehicles or buying and selling. And so that's one thing that it goes beyond just what we're talking about today, but even just anybody, you don't have to have gotten a degree or so, but anybody, people are really getting their hands in there and getting dirty with the vehicles, and they enjoy it. It's great to hear that your industry has been thriving with that. And as people are saving a little bit of money, as we all know, sometimes these things are nice to haves, right? I want to add this to my car, but I don't want to spend $2,000. I'm going to save up for it. Stimulus helped, and
like, exactly.
Money, right?
It was interesting, like Costco, which remained open, oddly enough, as soon as the stimulus came in the first time, it was like there was a massive, I think it was a 72-inch TV for exactly $13.99. And I'm like, hot diggity dog. $1,400 check. It must be a sign of the gods.
There you
I'm sure
go.
Costco planned that completely. I was just dumbfounded. I was like, you guys did way too well on
That's why
that.
they don't lose. That's why I'm there all the time. Really quick, I want to pause for a second here. Of course, we're with Eli, and if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A, so we can get to your questions that you have for Eli. So with that, where are we gonna see you in 2022? What kind of races? What kind of competitions? Now that things are, what's the scoop in terms of where, as we're getting to kind of the tail end, hopefully,
Right.
of post-pandemic life, whatever that's going to look like. What are you hearing that's going to look like in your industry, and what plans do you have for the next year?
So currently in my industry and what I'm doing now, a lot, I mean, I'm barely like keeping up with everything going on. If anything, I'm overwhelmed. So a lot of this year is just done on pure manufacturing and building parts. The plan for this year is to basically get the car ready for track events. The car I normally use, which was a B-Spec Rio, I'm basically going to get it reconditioned and ship it back to California, where a majority of sanctioning events like NASA Pro Racing, which I race with them a lot, um, I'll do the events in Southern California, and I'll have my race car there. And the funny part is that car, I can drive it to and back to the track, to and forth, back and forth. And I just have a place to store it. A good friend of mine will rent me out his garage for a bit and have one car there. And then for here in the Pacific Northwest, Rally is very big here. Rally is I'm sure you've heard of Ken Block. He does Travis Pastrana. They do off-road and like rally cars, Subaru, which is like the name brand here in the Pacific Northwest.
Really?
What's that?
Is it full of Subarus up there? Is that?
Yeah, here in Oregon and Washington State, it's Subaru Fest. Like everybody and their grandma has a Subaru, and you can't blame them. Here we get, there's a lot of dirt here. There's a snow. There's a ton of rain. So Subaru is the best car for everyone here. That and Jeeps. People love Jeeps here.
Yeah.
The Jeep country a bit. But the rally scene is very huge. There's 3 rallies here just within 2 hours from me. There's Olympus Rally, which just finished, and then Ken Block just announced his partnership with Subaru again. And then there's Oregon Trail Rally, which is about 30 minutes from me, 30 to 40 minutes from me. And then there's Tour de Forest, which is about an hour and a half from me. So the rally scene is huge here. So I'll probably end up building a rally car for here, and then have a road race car in Southern California. And those are the plans for 2022.
Will you be entering any competitions in the next year?
So in this year, I'll probably be doing a few track events in Southern California. So the beauty behind like organizations as far as like NASA, and there's other like independent track organizations as well, is you don't have to have a cage or anything else. You can just go take your car, have a good time. And then if you want to go serious, then that's when you get a cage and join a wheel-to-wheel class. There's multiple classes where your car will fit, and you can be competitive based on power to weight and what you're doing and stuff like that, and tires. So my plan is basically to have a good time over there, and then set up for my favorite form of racing at the moment is in endurance racing, enduros, which is basically just imagine one car and being on track for about 3 hours straight. And normally sprint races, wheel-to-wheel races are about 45 minutes, and that's a sprint race. At the pro level, it's an hour and a half where there's 2 stints for 2 drivers, like IMSA. But as far as like racing for myself, that's what I plan to do is basically this year, just get the car set up and then do track events in it, have a good time. And then next year, move into do endurance events because that's what I enjoyed doing the most. I think what was it, a few years ago, before COVID, I did an endurance event at Buttonwillow Raceway, which is right by. It's about 2.5 hours from you guys. It's about 30 minutes away from Bakersfield, just down the 5 freeway. And you get off on Lurdo, and fun track. And at summer at 108-degree weather, it was just me and a couple of friends, and I basically single-handedly took the car, ran it for 3 hours straight, and won my class, and then overall was in the top 10. I was 8th overall against prototype cars, against like pro budget teams, like high-end cars. And here was this little economy box car that was in the top 10, and then won the class, my class, with I think a 7-lap lead. It was an awesome time. I enjoyed it. Enjoy the camaraderie, and that's the best part about it. So my plans are racing for sure.
Okay. Matthew
And
wants to know if you're going to race your car. Can you do it in the next year around the Cerritos parking lot? I'm sure the college, if you're going to host the race,
I can probably bring it, but I wasn't racing. It's not.
No,
It's a
I'm
fun
not.
car, but
I'm
it's a
going to
wine.
get the college in trouble for asking that. No, I'm kidding. But that would be great, actually. I think once things get back, and then to have that on site, that would be amazing. I think for students and folks to check out, I think that would be great.
Yeah.
To see the car. Do you have any photos that you could pull up or anything? And we can wait. I can stall for you here for a minute or
Yeah.
two.
Sure. I'm
Pull up a
happy to
couple
if I can
things.
figure out how to do it. Let's see here.
And again, any questions that anybody has, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we're happy to help Eli answer those for you.
So let's see here. I just want to, okay, there's share screen, there's Q&A. How do I add a picture to this thing? That's what I was.
Well, if you have the photo up, if you just, do you have the green share screen button?
Oh, share screen? Yep.
Yeah, so then you can just share whatever window you have your photos on.
Okay, so I have quite a few, so try to find them if I can. Let's see here, because I have a ton of parts, but I don't. Let's see, side parts, gin buggy. Wow. Where would I find it? So many parts. Oh, there's Elantra. I would have to look for it.
Okay.
I wasn't prepared for that one.
Sure. Or any of the cars that you have or anything like that I've worked on in the past, just as far as a visual, I think that's great. I think AJ said that she may have some that she can send and I can share. Sure, if you can send those, AJ, we can do that, and we can share those for Eli as well. Eli, just in the meantime, one thing I do want to ask you, I'm going to go backwards a little bit, back to Cerritos College as a student, and even prior to that, I'm really curious to know, and I always like to ask our guests, tell us about your beginnings even before Cerritos, right? In terms of, when you were in high school and all of that, and did you have family or family in particular that were involved in motocross or in sports or in anything in racing, or kind of what those influences and those motivations were for you as a young person, and then getting to Cerritos, and kind of, I think that's always very helpful for other students to be able to identify.
I'll do my best. So mine's a little bit of an oddball story, honestly. So none of my family, as far as like, I'm an only child, and none of my family really had much education. My mom was a total business guru, like hardcore, like hustler, would make deals and stuff like that, and got to start a little business here and there. So that's her. She was the one that raised me. She was the one that did all the work and helped me out and pushed me to do stuff. As far as education, or people moving me to motorsports, no one really did. The only thing I, if anything, was motorsports related is that my mom was a bit of a speed demon. Especially when I was a little kid. She had a 300ZX twin turbo, and she would love to bomb that car around, and I was in the passenger seat, and I was always just giggling like a little kid because she would speed up and look at my face, and I just keep going, and that's about as close as it would get. But I've always enjoyed the driving experience. I've always enjoyed cars overall, and I wanted to know more and more, but I never had an avenue or an option, or I never had anyone to guide me to it. And so when I went to Cerritos College from Cal State LA, I was taking mechanical engineering at the time, because of the same reason I enjoyed cars, I wanted to know more, but they were giving me more math, and I like finance, but I'm not really good at the maths. So I was like, all right, I'll be patient and grow through this. And at the time I was doing that. And then when I went to Cerritos and I saw their auto department, I was like, this is finally, I have an option to learn more of what I really wanted to learn initially. And that's when they got it that's when the whole ball started, really. So as far as like family, it's like if you don't have any family that's into cars, or if you don't have any connection when you're young, don't feel bad. I didn't either. I just like it slowly like pushed me to that, and one way or another it found me. And then as soon as I found it, I was like, okay, I know this is exactly what I want to do. So that was basically my avenue towards it.
One thing I like also, Eli, is I'm looking here, you're an editor for the Korean car blog Test Drives, and you write reviews for both Kia and Hyundai vehicles. You're lead videographer and writer for 2 racing series, right? The Veloster Challenge and the
Yep.
Pacific Hot Hatch here. So you have your mix of different things, and you're writing and all of that. So talk to us about the value, because I've always talked about how if you're really into and you're passionate about an industry, it's really doing what you're doing, which is not just obviously working on the vehicles and what have you, but also getting behind your laptop and getting on there and getting in these conversations. You talked about that you've joined podcasts, and then you're out there writing and blogging. And so I'm sure you enjoy it, but at the same time, you're building your brand as well, right? For yourself and this company that you're building up.
Yeah, it's funny how that turned out, to be honest with you, because it's in trying to build the brand, which was the car, ultimately speaking, was the little 2014 Kia Rio, which was the most unconventional car. Has no motorsports heritage. It was literally like had a blank slate, if you will. Most people, you could have started the traditional route, which could have been a spec Miata, a Miata that has racing heritage, an RX-7, an older one. You could have started something, a 240Z. It could have been so many different cars, and I picked a Kia Rio. Partly because that's exactly what it was. Like I would be the only game in town. I would be literally, I'd be a big fish in a small pond kind of situation if I was able to get a hold of that car and then expand from there. And as that process was going, people were looking for me, and as I was helping other companies build their brand, like Pierce Motorsports, they did so much for me in my development. And that was my second mentor, Jim Pierce, in motorsports. Why he mentored me in becoming a better driver, how to handle myself, and at the same time, to show my respect for him, I helped him build his brand and did everything I could for him. And during the time, his flagship vehicle was the Hyundai Veloster, which is the little hot hatch, quirky 3-door. And the turbo came out, and he focused on that car, made parts on it. And I basically emulated what he was doing, but moved to the Kia brand. And as I was doing that, I was getting connected with more and more people. I went to SEMA every year. I got to know more and more people. I got to know some of his acquaintances. I got to know other people at the same time during the track racing events and stuff like that. And the more and more people I connected, the more people I friended. People would ask me questions. It's like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on that? It was like this and that. And I got to meet somebody, hey, can like you, I got to meet you. It was like, hey, can we interview you, talk to you? And I'd be like, yeah. And then it would be like you and me, and we're just talking, having a great time. And they'd be like, hey, would you be interested in just, writing about cars? You seem to be really knowledgeable on the platform. And I'm like, yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, this sounds like fun to me. And I got to do that. Then I got connected with Kia corporate and,
Oh, wow.
and then was writing stuff for them on behalf of
Really?
the car blog. Yeah. And it's funny because you wouldn't think, the connections. That's why I said, is like most people go direct. It's not really direct. It's like going from one to then, and then you get connected to that. I even got, if I would have stayed in California, it's like one of my regrets, but not really. If I would have stayed in California at the time, my mentor was already connected with Hyundai Motorsport in the development of the Veloster N, which was a really big project at the time, but not many people want to talk about it. But he's like, if you would have stayed, you would have ended up working for Hyundai Motorsport. Oh, that's me. And that was me. And I was in Canada at the time. That's one of those. And I was getting, I was co-driving for a good friend of mine during a test event. It was a Big White resort. up in Canada. That was a fun event.
There you go. We didn't mean to embarrass you, but AJ found some good ones, and so I had to share. So no,
Yeah, that's a really good one. I have quite a few. I need to look for them. Um, but like
Go ahead.
I lost tangent. Sorry.
No, you were talking about Hyundai and the opportunity, how you might have ended up working for them at some point.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of connecting with people and maintaining that relationship. Awesome. So that was California Rally Series, and that was our rally car, which was the red one. That's a 1996 Ford Escort. It actually shared the same engine as the Mazda Miata, so it was a bulletproof engine basically. It was a front-wheel drive car, but basically in terms of parts and everything else, it was super easy to build that car on a budget. And the more expensive bits were just the suspension at that point. I built the cage for it myself, so it was a lot cheaper for me. The racing seats I got, and I've had them from other race cars, and I moved it to mine, so it would be a little bit better to keep the cost nominal. And then the front car, the one you see with the 996, that was a competitor. That's my friend of mine that I was telling you that he would literally get turbochargers and test it for professional teams. That was his job. That was a company that had him do it. So super awesome guy, hell of a good driver. We were fighting for second place at the time, and he was on the lead. And unfortunately, his serpentine belt snapped and cooked the engine, and he was out for the race, and we won on that technicality. But it was still a hard win because we were having issues on our last stage, which is pitch black in the middle of the mountains. And it was basically our ignition contact, our kill switch was going in and out of the fuse box. So it would cut out and then come back and cut out. And we were having a little bit of a light show going on at the same time because we had a light bar. So it'd be like going like that. So it was like, basically it was like a party going on in the car. I was like,
Very cool. The one thing, my interesting car story that I have is, my father owned a 78 Camaro Z28.
nice.
And my mom used to pick us up in that vehicle when I was a kid from like grade school. And you can hear that thing coming around the corner. So you knew when she was coming around because you imagined the engine on that thing. All that to say is my dad had to sell it, I want to say in about 1989, 1990 or so. And then only to find out several months later, I'll never forget him telling, he tells a story every once in a while. Because he knew the person he sold it to make a long story short, he comes to find out later. So, that car you sold me? He said, yeah, there's only 500 of them made in the world. Or might have been a smaller number than that. It was a special edition.
Oh, the IROC? The IROC C?
I'd have to ask him which one it was. But it was, yeah, he remembers buying it off the showroom. It was special ordered in 78. And I can't believe I sold this thing. He said for the amount he sold it to it. And I don't think they had an idea. All that to say, he says, I wish I would have kept it for you, right? To kind of pass those things on. But, and so it just shows the passion people have, for their vehicles and their cars and things like that don't depreciate, and both metaphorically or literally, right? And so it's definitely a great passion, a great hobby that people share with their families, and I think that's why you saw during the pandemic it was relatively pandemic proof, right?
It tied a lot of people together. I had one of my students that I taught. He ended up funny guy. Kid would build a car. He was into the classic, like beautiful, like early 60s cars. And he would build one, and he had a side business which was really interesting. He would sell skateboards, but the vintage skateboards.
Huh.
And this kid, he was I think he was 17 at the time, and he already had a network set out throughout the United States and would give finder's fees to anyone that could find a vintage skateboard that he would buy from. And then basically he would sell it to people that were already millionaires or six figures, and basically wanted to relive their moments of childhood and then buy that exact skateboard that they had when they were growing up. Yeah. But this kid is like, going back to automotive, he would restore cars, and his dad would help him out, and they're both car guys. And every now and then, like, he would restore a car and just give it to his dad because he just cared about it. And his dad would return the favor and restore one car and just give it to him, so they'd go back and forth. They would enjoy it, just the whole process of what it is. I've seen a lot of people get really close together family wise as far as like the vehicles. Like, just because of the family car, if you will, I've seen people restore it, and it just brings back memories of, when you were a kid and you were going to ride, and you'd go to the movies or shopping cart, and you would just enjoy the time that you had with your family, and your parents would enjoy the time when they had the car and the first brand new car and the experience they had from there. So it's really interesting to see, because cars do move people, and it's just a matter of how, if you will.
That's a good point. With that, I know we're almost running out of time here, so if we have any questions, folks can jump that in the chat or in the Q&A. I did have I lost my train of thought. I was going to ask.
No worries.
If anyone wants to get a hold of you, and it sounds like you've offered your time and what have you. So if we have students or other alums that maybe want to contact you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? How can we follow you on social if you're on there?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to contact me, you're welcome to contact me. Facebook. I'm on Facebook. If you want to follow part of what I do is you go on Instagram. So my personal endeavors are my name and racing. So it's Eli Villa Racing or Eli Villa Racing. As far as the business, that's E Villa Motorsports, and that's the one I tend to update the most. My personal one, if I do like track events and stuff like that, or random projects, that's when I'll tag it to my stuff, my personal stuff. But as far as like the motorsports endeavors and the racing, if it's my car involved or like the E Villa Motorsports race car, I'll just tag it to E Villa Motorsports and then tag myself afterwards. With that said, if there's one thing, like, for everyone watching, the students and you're looking to go, if you want to get involved in motorsports, if you're looking to just do a track day, just get a track day, just get your feet wet, join NASA for NASA pro racing, register an event, have a good time. If you don't want to take your car, if you're scared of breaking anything off, get a rental car and take it over there. I may or may have not done that. But a few things as far as like one thing I can say, because it's a heavy thing. If you're introverted like me, it's really hard to get out. With that said, push. Even take small victories. Just push and keep going. Volunteer your time. The best advice I can give, honestly, is Mr. Glick said it. I remember when he said it when we took our Auto 100 class. Don't burn bridges. That's my advice to you. You may run into some jobs that you'll work for free or work in general, and they may not be great. Your boss may not be great. The situation may not be good. It's same with anyone you meet. Do not burn the bridge. Just smile and be polite. Never burn bridges. Automotive is really small. Everyone knows everyone. Whether you're trying to get a job as a tech or you're trying to get a job as marketing or management or sales, everyone knows everyone. And I can't strengthen how much how small the automotive industry is. With that said, if you want to do it, if you want to jump into motorsports or jump into a job like that, there are people that are hiring, particularly hand skills. Like labor right now is a shortage of all-time high. People are hurting to hire techs. A good friend of mine, he specializes in Porsches and Porsche racing. He has his own racing team. Very, very meticulous man, very hardcore, very strong, very assertive. Nice gentleman as well. But to give you a scope of what he does, so he's worked on, there's a Porsche called the 959, which was originally designed to be a Group B car, which is a whole different animal as far as you can look up what Group B is, Group B racing or rallies. It's an insane series. There's a great history about it. It was banned, put it that way. It was so dangerous, it was banned. Porsche made a car for basically that series, and the series was shut down, the car was canceled, and at the time the car was they already made the cars and they sold them for $500,000 brand new. At the time, that was in the early 90s, to give you a scope. Now they're worth about 800,000 to $1 million, because collectors, right? Yeah, I know, it's an insane, and the car is a beautiful car, all-wheel drive, turbocharged, 100% carbon fiber, like a Formula One car, or not 100%, but the whole bottom piece is under 100%, and then it's like aluminum body panels and a completely custom-made like piece of art, honestly. He has 5 of them at his shop. Last time I checked them, which was a few years, like 5. These are all customers' cars, and he has them 5 at his shop. So to give you a scheme of things, that's more than $2 million right there, just sitting in a lift that'd be specially made. And then on top of that, he has a bunch of other older Porsche restoration vehicles that are each worth 100,000 or 200 to 300, and even the new Porsche GT3s and all that. And he was telling me that he needs a tech. Like he's hurting for techs. It's so hard to find a good tech, like good technician that's motivated, that's smart, willing to learn. So I've when I was here, I was also a high school teacher for machining and welding here in Washington. And every company I've talked to, welding, woodworking, anything, said the same thing, is like, we're hurting. If you want to make a good living, trades are great right now, like great. And the cost of education is a fraction of that of a bachelor's or master's degree. So like, don't discount yourself. If you don't want to do an MBA or a bachelor's, don't discount yourself. You still can make a really good living, even better than some. I remember when I was in STEM 21, an AC guy, he had his own little AC business going on, and he made about 130,000, 140 a year. And he bought a $23,000 helmet, to give you a scope, because he wanted to join the track. He enjoyed, he had a nice car and everything else. So that should give you a scheme of things. Like, trades are great. Trades are big right now.
Yeah, it's ironically a great time for someone to jump into a job, in one of those types of jobs, because they're available right now. And you're right, that's the same thing that I'm hearing in the line of work that I do as well, is the need for more. There's a big demand right now for skilled workers, especially those coming from different career and technical education programs that are offered at community colleges, right? And so at a fraction of a cost, and can provide definitely a very strong living wage. And so, no, you make an excellent point. So I think that's a good call to action for anyone listening out there, either themselves or family or friends. And now's a good opportunity. It really is.
Trades are great. I can't, strengthen that enough, that you can make a really good living on trades. So, Eli,
with that, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I know you're very busy like everybody else, but I always like to advocate for our alums, the capacity to give your time to the association, to the students, to offer all your insights. That's a tremendous value to the college. So thank you so much for doing that. We really appreciate you being on.
Thank you for your time. Thank you everyone for watching.
And when we get back to campus, we want to do this live, want to do this in person, and
more than happy to.
Won't have to worry about looking for photos. Just bring the vehicles with you, and we'll do some show and tell.
Right? Yeah. Sorry about that. I was trying to look for them. I was like, oh.
No, we found some good ones. So thanks to AJ.
Oh, perfect.
For finding that. So that was great. So with that, thank you everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it. Keep checking your emails, of course, for the e-blasts that come from the Alumni Association about future events that we're having. And there's a lot going on at the college as well. So definitely stay tuned to that. And yes, I know Desiree says she can't wait because she collects classic cars. So that means Desiree could also bring her classic cars as well. So there you go, Desiree.
Classic cars are big time. There's a whole industry just on classic cars.
Oh yeah. And the neat thing about it is, like I heard someone say not too long ago, I never thought of it that way, but it makes 100% sense. You're better off buying a classic car because it won't depreciate than buying a brand new car. At least when you want to resell it, at some point it's not going to lose its value.
And it's not only on like the nicer stuff like Corvette and old Mercedes 83. I mean, those are beautiful cars. Even oddly enough, even on the Japanese stuff, I mean, kids are spending like 10, 15 grand for a 1986 Toyota Corolla. All because of an anime. Initial D for those that are wondering. So
Desiree, who's on our alumni council, is saying she's got a 74 Corvette and 83 Mercedes. That sounds like a challenge to me, Eliza. It sounds like she wants to race you. So we'll have to set that up.
You know what? The track event, I'm more than happy. Just so you know, like a couple years back, I was doing a private event, and there was a little old lady, and she was up in age. But she was driving a Dodge. I think it was the Bumblebee Charger, or the
Uh-huh.
Hellcat. No, it was a Hellcat Charger, and she was just all over the track. She was having a great time. We were all like
Wow.
routing for, and she was in Willow Springs. That was the track which is known as the fastest track in the West, and she was just having a blast.
That's
So
awesome. That's great. All right, everybody, have a great evening. Have a great rest of your Thursday evening and a weekend ahead. Eli, thank you so much. We'll have to stay connected for sure.
yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah, we'll
More
chat
than
again.
happy to.
All right. With that, bye, everybody. Have a good rest of your evening.